Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we conclude a two-day program on America's promise and the imperative that all of us need to take up around a sacred activism. You know, when you contemplate the United States of America, born as it was over 2.5 centuries ago, in the fires of revolution, not only militarily and politically as it separated itself from the colonial yoke of Great Britain, but also because there was a certain promise to what America, as it formed a nation state, sought to be. And even though that light has been tarnished many times and very deeply through the wounds of slavery and the essential genocide of indigenous populations, the might of America grew steadily until it peaked in the late 20th century, starting with the Second World War. And now, as the United States is viewed by most people around the world, the image of America as a carrier of light is being replaced by the United States as a carrier of the darkness of military aggression and economic and environmental exploitation. And it's in this moment of anguish for Americans in a country that's more divided than it's been since the Civil War over 150 years ago, a country that seems to have lost its way, to take a few moments to just remember our origins even before the Revolutionary War. Origins going back to the early part of the 17th century when pilgrims from England set foot at Plymouth Rock in 1621, and for a period of nearly 50 years interacted with the native populations in a genuine amicability and respect. So we know that there was something about those people who set foot on America's shores, the shores of North America, that had the light burned more brightly than the fires of avarice and greed and conquest and racism. The United States of America could have been what the world so desperately seeks. And that is a country that embodies a reverence for all of Earth's children, for all of Earth's ecological niches and planetary possibilities. And so today I want to just bring to our collective attention that tomorrow is Thanksgiving in the United States. And even though it's not recognized by other countries, it's a very sacred time for all Americans. It's a time of grief and sorrow for the Native Americans. And it's also a time of deep reflection and gratitude on the part of the conquering nation. So there's a lot of complexity to this holiday, and there's a lot of possibilities for the kind of reflection, deep reflection, that all of us, wherever we are on this planet, know in our hearts of heart we need to consider. Because if there's anything emerging out of our contemplation, it's nothing short of a sacred activism where the deepest awareness of our spiritual development comes together with the imperative to act to save our world. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to Humanity Rising. I want to now welcome Connie Marlow Baxter, who has really put this program together with her husband, Andrew Cameron. So Connie, I turn the program over to you with many thanks.
Thank you so much, Jim, for having us here on Humanity Rising. We're so honored to be included in this incredible forum that you're doing with Humanity Rising of addressing the situation and taking it into that higher frequency, that higher vibration where the solution exists. I don't think it's actually a solution to what is. It's an evolutionary process to what wants to be. And so that's what this forum is about. The 2 days, yesterday and first of all, I want to say we're broadcasting from Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is the ancestral homeland of the Patuxet native people who are under the sachem of the Massasoit Osamequin, who was a great peacemaker. He was the peacemaker, the sachem who met with the pilgrims, the separatists, so we call them the separatists to discern them from the Puritans who came 10 years later. The separatists were very different people, and we, with their vision and their desire to create a community based on freedom of conscience, that we can relate directly to our divine. We have that freedom ultimately, and that's where we're headed as far as I'm concerned, and that's what this forum is about taking us to that place where we have the freedom and the knowing to reconnect to our hearts and act accordingly in alignment with what the indigenous peoples have been carrying for us for millennia in their way of life, that direct connection, that trust-based paradigm. And so we are bringing now the physicists and cosmologists and astrologers who are taking us into that knowing, that understanding that leading edge science is taking us to, so we can align our hearts and our minds and let go of that old scientific paradigm that separated us from all ourselves and the rest of creation. So what we're going to do today is, if everybody can come on board, and one thing, I'm Connie Baxter Marlow, and this is Andrew Cameron Bailey, my beloved husband.
So she should be Connie Baxter Bailey. Okay.
Okay. And so we'll be kind of double teaming this to some degree. And let's see, we're taking that eagle perspective. And it's very interesting that the United States of America has the eagle as its symbol, because it is truly that American promise of liberty, justice, equality, and abundance for all is our birthright and is the true nature of the universe, where we're going in this evolutionary leap in consciousness that Brother Phil Lane, who's here with us, is taking us to from the heart of the indigenous people and the prophecies of the indigenous people. And Dr. Jude Currivan is taking us there with the unitive narrative and its foundational necessity for the sacred activism that it'll take us to that higher place with boots on the ground. And Will Keepin, who is a physicist and a spiritual activist. And then we have Maggie and Engel, who will take us with the astrology of the United States. So if everyone can come on board, each person is going to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll go around and each person will speak. And Brother Phil Lane will open the whole thing with a prayer. We were opened yesterday with a song and a prayer by grandmother Barbara Mary Kerpus, a Pokanoket elder and clan grandmother. But Phil will do a prayer and give us some words about the fulfillment of prophecy. So let's see. And Andrew will speak on In God we trust, and e pluribus unum, those symbols of the United States that take us into this knowing. So it's all there in symbol. We're just in process of getting there. So we'll give you some tools today for getting there. So please introduce yourselves. Will, would you introduce yourself?
Yes. Is this my 3-minute moment?
Yes, this is it for introduction and what you'll be speaking on, and then you'll have 10 minutes to go for it.
In down the road a bit.
Down the road
Great.
after everyone's
Not
introduced.
right now, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Connie, for organizing this, and Jim for hosting this beautiful moment on the eve of Thanksgiving. As Jim said, it's a sacred time. And let us enter into this sacred time together. My name is William Keepin. I'm the founder of the Satyana Institute and also of the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International Program and the Dawn of Inner Spirituality Program. The essence of what I want to speak to is encapsulated beautifully by the Dalai Lama in a talk I heard that he gave in 1990. And he said, if you want to understand the deepest secrets of the cosmos, there are 4 steps. First, explore the outer visible universe. Second, explore the inner invisible worlds. Third, explore the relationship between the two. And fourth, from the previous 3, you can come to know the deepest secrets of the cosmos. So in essence, what he was saying was, first, do what we could call Western science, because Western science is kind of the first step. We explore our physical universe, the visible, tangible cosmos, the universe, as it is known in science. But that's just step 1. This is where Western, civilization has some things to learn. Because step 2 is to then explore the invisibles, the intangibles, the unseen realms and worlds, which is an inner exploration. It's a deep dive into the heart, inward. And then 3, what is the relationship between these two? What is the relationship between matter and spirit? What is the relationship between the science of outer reality and the inner science of inner reality? That is a key question, because each human being stands at that nexus of manifestation as an instantiation of a spiritual being inhabiting a physical body. And so we must come into direct relationship with that intercommunion between the invisible and the visible worlds. And then from that foundation, we can connect to the deepest source of our being and then become an instrument of divine action and agency in the world. This is absolutely crucial, that we can only do our true work if we connect to that invisible inner divinity and then act from that foundation in the outer visible world. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We look forward to more.
Thank you, Will.
And Brother Phil, could you introduce yourself? You're mute.
muted,
You're
Phil.
on.
Great. First of all, I want to give my heartfelt thanksgiving to our good brother, Jim Garrison, and his whole team, who's been doing this every morning without fail for months, I think over a year now, since this whole COVID thing has brought so many wonderful, wonderful programs to us. And as well as Connie and Andrew, thank you so much for organizing this. And it's so nice to meet you, William. So nice to see you, Dr. Jude, again. You know, I think the word synthesis really helps us to understand what's unfolding on Mother Earth, because we can see the incredible synthesis that has taken place over this very short time of a little over 500 years. I remember when I got to be 50, I thought, I said 500 years is nothing, just 50 times 10. And of course, now that I'm in my 80th year, it's even faster. just like Crowfoot said, life's like the breath of a buffalo on a cold day, or a firefly on a warm summer night, or the shadows vanishing before the setting sun. That's life. And so really, to think about it, this last little over 500 years has been a very short time. And you see the two most powerful forces in human transformation: spirituality. I use the word religion, but I think it's been so abused. If you use the word religion, people relate it to the things that were certainly not religious. But spirituality and science, the two most powerful, potent forces. And I would say that really they're one, really. That one without the other, without reason, spirituality can become fanaticism. Science without spirituality can become a Frankenstein, as we can see. And so part of the synthesis that I see that occurred, and I think it's so important we acknowledge all contributions of our human family into who we are now as human beings. Because if I was to only draw from the Ohantawa Dakota, my father, who met my mother in Haskell Indian School, clear back, and this was clear back 1930 some. And then you bring the spirituality together. What emerged from my parents attending the Indian residential school was this beginning of this synthesis of not just quote unquote Western science, which now has been, from my perspective, transcended and being transformed by our understanding that we have an inner world, as you mentioned. And really, it's from this inner world emerges science and spirituality. So I think it's so important to ask ourselves, because one of the big challenges we have now is this whole issue of cultural appropriation. The last thing I just like to say is, let's really look deeply at this situation. Am I willing, from whatever culture I come, unless I say I come from a different culture, am I willing just to take only what has come out of my culture only? Can I use a cell phone? The cell phones were not part. Our prophecies talk about cell phones. Our prophecies talk about these things. But aren't we really becoming universal humans? Aren't we becoming something different than we've ever been before in history? With all these inputs from science and spirituality, different cultures, different perspectives. So that's what I'd like to say, that we are transforming as a human family, and we are one human family without question.
Connie, you're on mute.
And so, okay, Brother Phil, thank you so much. And for anybody who wants to see their bios, there are links in the chat. There'll be links in the chat for their websites and bios. And so, Jude, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Connie. Thank you. It's lovely to be here with everyone. I'm a cosmologist, which means I'm curious about the nature of reality. And so what Brother Phil just shared and what Will shared, I wholeheartedly agree with. And we're living at an incredible time where leading edge science is indeed converging and synthesizing with universal wisdom teachings and spiritually based teachings. So I know we'll explore that further, because it really does underpin this potential transformation of us and an evolutionary moment. I'm also a planetary healer, so I'm very aware of the traumas that we hold within our collective psyche and with the sentient body of our beloved Mother Earth as a result of our dis-ease of separation, which has been part of our journey more recently. I'm also an author and co-founder of Whole World View. So Whole worldview seeks to serve the understanding, experiencing, and embodying of unitive awareness. And so in that sense, it's a sacred worldview, because sacredness is wholeness. And one of my many great teachers, many shamanic teachers, I've journeyed to over 80 countries around the world, had the great privilege of learning from incarnate and discarnate wisdom keepers. But is this understanding that we're all part of the web of life, and the emergence of a living, loving cosmology of a meaningful and purposefully evolving universe is one that we meet together now. And for me, that is truly a moment of thanksgiving. And finally, in terms of sacred activism, Wendell Berry once said there are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. So may we invite each other and all of us to re-enter the sacred space and sacred time of our beautiful whole world. So I'll complete there, and onward we go together.
Yes, onward to peace on earth together. And here's Andrew Bailey, who will introduce himself.
Note that Andrew Bailey, and Jim, you called me Andrew Cameron, which is true because I'm Andrew Cameron Bailey. All you've got to do is have three names and everybody gets totally confused. We both have three names. What are you going to do? So I'm an Englishman who grew up in South Africa. My training was in the sciences as a young man. So physics, chemistry, mathematics. I was a dual major in chemistry and mathematics. I have enough physics to understand what Will Keepin is talking about, what Jude is talking about, what people like Nassim Haramein are talking about, to some degree, the same with math and the same with chemistry. But what I was taught was very, very reductionist. I came over here I arrived here, sailed the sailboat across the Atlantic, arriving here on Thanksgiving of 1969. So I call myself a latter-day pilgrim, sitting next to an actual pilgrim descendant, and out of the window right over there is where the Mayflower landed. And there's actually a replica of the Mayflower at anchor right over there. So this is where it began, or where that certain thing began that culminated in what we now call Thanksgiving. So tomorrow there's a whole lot of stuff going on here in Plymouth. I'm going to speak on the subject. Connie told me this very recently, so I'm like, okay. She wants to hold up a dollar bill. Do you have that dollar bill? She's going to hold up this dollar bill, and it's going to say, what?
In God we trust.
So I'm going to talk about God.
We are one.
We could each of us could talk about God, whatever that means to us, for weeks. And trust. Now, I'm the co-author of a book called The Trust Frequency, which is a teaching as to how to live from a place of trust as opposed to from a place of fear. Connie and I co-wrote that book published that book in 2012. It still holds up. It's pretty strong. If any of you haven't read it, get a hold of us. We'll make sure you have a copy. So, in God we trust. And what's the other one?
E pluribus unum.
That sounds like an old language from back in the day, right? So the unity and diversity, or the duality, non-duality nexus. How can we be in these apparently separate boxes on this Zoom screen and at the same time be one being? So I'll talk about that. So that's me. Thank you.
Yes, and he referred to that 3-day harvest celebration that has been called the first Thanksgiving. And that was just what it was. It was a time of thanksgiving and gratitude with the Mayflower Pilgrim separatists, 50 of whom survived the first winter. Half of them died from the general sickness, either scurvy or
unfamiliar organisms.
Yeah. Who knows? But that harvest celebration of 3 days was just that. Two cultures coming together in celebration, 90 native people and 50 surviving pilgrims, mostly women and children. And so we just want to honor that day that's coming here tomorrow and being celebrated here and around the country, of gratitude for abundance. And it was the beginning of this 54 years of peace and friendship that was established with a peace treaty that was written with the Osamequin, the Massasoit Osamequin, and John Carver, the then governor of Plymouth. And on their first meeting, they created a peace treaty that lasted 54 years of peace and friendship. So,
and a gratitude for each other. You, beloved Native people, Brother Phil, representing you and your folk, we are so grateful to have you in our lives as our friends, as our wisdom keepers, as our elders, as our friends.
yes. And 30 years ago, when I first met Brother Phil, I gained such insights from his heart and his spirit in Aspen, Colorado, and am so honored now, 30 years later, to be with him here as the consciousness is evolving and opening to what these Native people are carrying in their understanding of the nature of the universe, and in that heart and spirit of the unity and oneness of all life and all of creation. So we'll transition into that with Brother Phil, who will open us with a prayer and a few of his comments on the fulfillment of prophecy. So thank you so much, Brother Phil, for being here with us.
And thank you. Otakashawakataka, Creator of the universe, most beloved one, all powerful one, most kind one, most compassionate one, ever forgiving one, O most majestic one, O ancient of days, O blessed beauty, we call upon your holy power at this time, as we have since the beginning of time. Through our sacred covenant, that you might enlighten our hearts and minds and upraise us, and especially the United States of America and its highest promises it's made in its Constitution, in its vision originally, that this nation may become as great in spiritual degrees and even greater in spiritual degrees as it has in material degrees. That the full spiritual potentiality that our prophecies speak of, in which time, out of the ashes of these current fruitless struggles and strifes between us as members of the same human family, that as we transcend this in these next years, that the United States of America may become again a light spiritually to the world. Because we can see, as indigenous people, since its beginning, after this time of peace, after this time was demonstrated we could all live together, that Connie and Andrew have so dedicated their lives for us to understand, that this pattern, Creator, of one war after another war after another war might be fully and completely left behind. And instead, that we may humble ourselves and we may look deep within our own selves on all these issues we're facing. No consumption, no cartels. We're the ones consuming the drugs. Why? Why aren't our mothers, Creator? May we be inspired to support our mothers and young families and young children, so they have no desire to take drugs. Why is it, Creator? Let us look deeply within our souls and hearts this day. And we give thanksgiving to all the tribes and nations of the east from where comes the red sunrise, and ask we might have forgiveness between us. And to the south from where comes new life, we might come together in unity and harmony and forgiveness, and end these senseless, fruitless wars are destroying the very soul of who we are as human beings. And to Kashawakantaka, we call upon all the tribes of the west from where comes thunder, lightning, and rain, that they may also set aside these weapons of destruction And instead, may forgiveness, may kindness, may compassion awaken in all our hearts and minds for all of creation. All living things that we might have good feelings for. In the north, from where comes the white snow, we give thanksgiving to all those tribes and nations. Ask there might be peace between us. Those north winds might purify our hearts and minds so nothing remains except those high values of respect, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, love, humility, and creator of all good things, who respect and know that from the very beginning of time, the spiritual equality of men and women has been a reality. May we awaken to that and awaken the sacred eagle of humanity has two wings. One is man and one is a woman. That both wings that eagle must have equal power and respect, just as every human being has been born of sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting, in a good way. And we just ask forgiveness for the overabundance of those masculine elements, those masculine dimensions of life have been overabundantly used and has brought us to this place of almost destroying ourselves and our beloved Mother Earth and all living things, that we may truly understand that we human beings have a high destiny that's just now being ready to be fulfilled. And now, in respect and honor of all those relatives from our Jewish faith, Christian faith, Muslim faith, Baha'i faith, all the Christian Judaic tradition, whole process, I'd like to say this prayer of unity. O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal unto them thy great purpose. May they follow in thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps with the light of knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord. It's just my really heartfelt prayer that we may truly awaken more and more every day as a human family and recognize the principle of the prior unity and oneness of our human family. That we have always been human beings. And I truly believe, this is from my perspective on things, we all have our perspective, which it's that very dimension to share our different perspectives with love and compassion, respect, that's causing this great synthesis to occur. Also, the tough times we've been through that have caused us to really look deep inside and change our hearts. And from changing our hearts, we change our minds. I remember this elder shared with me many years ago. He said, he said, Dr. Jai, he said, grandson, you're never going to solve problems before you solve through the intellect. Because it's the nature of the intellect. For every problem it solves, it creates 10 more. That's the nature of the intellect. It's this incredible gift we have. But it's only when the heart opens and the tears flow and we make that journey from here to here, from the head to the heart and the heart to the head, and that connection's made, do we really begin to understand what's occurring within ourselves and without ourselves, within and without. And that journey, he said, though, is the longest journey you'll ever make in your life. He said it's from here to here. Because it's so easy to get caught up here, just in this intellect. And think that just because we have some understanding, like we can see the battles that went on between science and spirituality, of which, Jude, you've been right at the heart of that understanding of that synthesis that's going on, understanding that really what we understood 500 years ago about science, and we thought it was the greatest, most powerful in the world. By this integration that's happened, this synthesis has happened. Now science has advanced way, way beyond, and I think that there's something really to look at here too. And I just want to just pose this question because it's one I've really asked myself. I've studied the best I can, the various civilizations that they developed and so forth, and for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, until the middle of the last century, till around 1844, 1850, humanity traveled almost, it was like a straight line in terms of speed, in terms of scientific development. Then all of a sudden we see in the middle of the last century this parabolic curve occurring, and it's still going straight up. Now some synthesis happened there. Why is it? Why is it for thousands of years science, the speed people traveled, went on for the same? And all of a sudden, just not that long ago, really, all of a sudden we see this parabolic curve, and we're going up now with AI and all this. I really truly believe it is coming together of all our human family, bringing all these gifts together. Now, I also want to say that there's a lot of fear about these technologies that are emerging. And that's why the spirit is so important. Because I can use a hammer to build a beautiful home, or I can use a hammer to hit somebody in the head. That comes from inside here. And so what I see we need, along with all this incredible science, is this spiritual revolution that's happening right now, the spiritual transformation of our human family. And it's happening so quickly, even though it's difficult to see. And so I pray so much for this time of Thanksgiving, that we will come to a time where truly we'll be able to give thanksgiving and truly understand that only abused people abuse people. Only colonized people colonize people. Only hurt people. And that the only way through this is not more war, not more conflict, not more hatred, not more prejudice. It's going to be, which sounds to some people so corny, but I believe it. And that it's going to take our hearts expanding and going beyond this limited view we have here and becoming that eagle that you talked about at the beginning, Connie. We have to become that eagle, to look at the whole thing that's unfolded and this great spiritual springtime that's now emerging. As our prophecy said, we go through a long spiritual wintertime, about 500 years. But then, and we can see it, we would begin to emerge from our adolescence of the human family into our spiritual maturity as a human family. And that's where I believe we're at now. And the only thing I want to add is that I think that we, even in this dialogue now, we're visiting about male, female, the sacred feminine, which I believe in. I think that we have to really look at spiritual qualities that different cultures, some cultures call what we may call feminine, masculine. Other cultures call what we may call masculine, feminine. I think what we want to realize that every human being, that really our soul has no ethnicity, has no gender, has no class, has no race. Our soul is a reflection of the oneness of our Creator. Sacred oneness of our Creator. Our soul, I personally believe, at conception, our soul connects at conception. And from that time on, there's no way we can be destroyed, because each of us is conceived as sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. And I think that's why this American promise, quote unquote, is so important, because it recognized the spiritual dimension, although we can see behavior-wise, maybe didn't understand quite what it's saying in this thing, in God we trust, or in this whole spiritual part. But I believe, without question, that whatever we have to face these next years, that we will see, this will be after I'm in the other side camp, and I'll be able to view it from over there, that this nation, the United States of America, is destined to become as great spiritually, in a spiritual sense. I'm truly in a spiritual sense, not to go around and kill people and blow people up and things like this, but to truly become a nation to help lead us spiritually, as other beautiful nations are doing as well. So I want to thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing these other wonderful presenters, and thank you again. I think that we have so much to be thankful for in terms of just having health. And so let us conclude this by just remembering all our relatives on Mother Earth that right now are suffering from war, are suffering from hunger, are suffering from no water to drink, are incarcerated because they were not given the love and kindness and compassion they needed as children. And all those who have been reduced to selling drugs in order to make a life for themselves, and in the end, all the things that come with that. Let's have total and complete faith that we're leaving all that behind. That is our destiny. Our destiny is not to kill each other. Our destiny is to love each other and to recognize that each and every one of us is a sovereignty, ancient and everlasting, sovereignty, ancient, and perishable, and everlasting spiritual beings. That's who we are, sacred beings. Halami Chante Washtelo, Shunk Mano Hemeado, Chinupasapa Hemeado, Halami Chante Washte. Aho.
Wow, thank you so much, Brother Phil, and for bringing in this synthesis. And this, what we feel is now is the third, what we call the third great synthesis, that this science that Dr. Jude Currivan and Will Keepin are going to share with us is going to take us into that place of our hearts in this third synthesis, the first synthesis being in Plymouth in that 54 years of peace and friendship. The second synthesis being when the aspects of the great law came into the United States Constitution. And now this third synthesis that opens us to our hearts and our pan-indigenousness and the principles that we carry in our heart of sharing versus hoarding and saving, concern for the common good versus individualism at the expense of the common good, cooperation versus competition, concern for future aspects of present action instead of instant gratification, and respect and reverence for all of life versus the dominance of concern for profit, and trust in the love of a higher power manifested in all action versus fear and doubt, and living in balance with the rhythms of life versus being driven by a man-made concept of time, and understanding the interrelatedness of all things and all actions versus separation, and understanding and trusting abundance versus fear of scarcity, and understanding of the co-creative power of thought versus random coincidence, and equality between all aspects of life versus human dominance, and incorporation of the metaphysical into physical reality versus bound to the limits of physical reality. So I so feel that those are indigenous knowings, indigenous principles, and that's what where we'll be coming from and creating and living soon on this planet. And just gratitude to each of you for bringing the tools, and including my beloved Andrew for bringing these tools. So let's hear from Will Keepin. And one thing that Brother Phil brought forth is that what Will calls gender equality, gender equity. Is that it, Phil? Will?
Gender equity and reconciliation, yes.
Yeah. So it was wonderful that Phil brought that up. So let's hear from Will.
Well, thank you, Connie, for that beautiful summary. And thank you, Chief Phil Lane for such a beautiful prayer and a comprehensive and sweeping vision. And I love so many things about it, so I won't go into them, but I just want to point to one thing where you said the heart is the key, because the heart can basically cross the abyss that the mind creates. The heart can unify the divisions that the mind creates and then cherishes. So, so beautiful and so important. So I want to begin by just speaking to the essence of where science can actually make a contribution and unpack this 4 steps that I was speaking about with the Dalai Lama. So I'm going to share my screen here. Right here. Optimize for video. Here we go. Okay, and then I want to go to full screen here. Hang on 1 second. Here we go. Okay, can you all see this? So there's a new theme that's emerging in many disciplines of science now, which is that something transpires behind that which appears. This is the realm of the spiritual, the invisible, the unseen. It's that step 2 of the Dalai Lama's schema that I outlined earlier. There are many different ways in which this is appearing in science, but my background is in physics, so I'm going to talk about the work a little bit of the physicist, quantum physicist David Bohm. And after 50 years of careful research on science and extensive inquiries into spirituality with people like Krishnamurti and the Dalai Lama, David Bohm put it all together to answer that 3rd question in that schema I gave earlier. What's the relationship between the outer world and the inner world? And he came up with this concept he calls the holo movement. And to summarize it, the cosmos is a single unbroken wholeness in flowing movement in which each part of the flow contains the entire flow. Now, this holo movement that Bohm speaks of has 2 aspects. One is the part that we can see, essentially the outer visible aspect, and the other is all the rest of it, the parts we can't see. He called these the explicate order and the implicate order. And to illustrate the relationship between the 2, he used this simple metaphor. So if you see there on the left, imagine you have 2 cylinders, and between the 2 cylinders, you fill it with a thick, transparent liquid like glycerin. And then if you look on the inner cylinder, it's turning. We rotate that inner cylinder counterclockwise. And what happens is, if you look at the middle picture, and then on the left-hand side, we place a droplet of ink on the top surface. We put a drop of ink there. And then as you turn that inner cylinder, what happens is that ink drop stretches out, as you can see in the middle picture. And as you keep turning it, it gets thinner and fainter. And eventually on the right-hand side, it disappears completely. Now, at this point, it's tempting to conclude that the ink has been kind of randomly distributed throughout the glycerin, kind of like, cream and coffee. But it turns out if you reverse the order of that rotation and turn it the other way, what happens is, turning it in the opposite direction, is that ink structure begins to reappear. And as you keep turning, it gets thicker and shorter. And eventually on the right-hand side, the
Will, we're not seeing your changes of your slides. You're stuck on the very first one. You need to go to slideshow. You need to screen it from slideshow up at the very top. Go from slideshow there. No, over slideshow. No, keep very top. Hold on.
Top.
And see slideshow.
In the menu at the top.
In the menu at the top, there's animations, slideshow. There's home, insert, draw, design, animations, slideshow. No, wait, the other side.
There you get in there.
Getting there, small.
More to the
there,
left.
there. Your arrow's almost on it. Down, go down and click on it.
You're there.
Click on slideshow. You see it?
I don't see it. I'm sorry.
Your arrow was on it.
Right there, you're on it.
No, that's me.
Well, that's you.
Now go up a little in the slide. Dear.
I've never had this happen before. Let me check. Let me just see what. So
Yeah, I've got to launch a slideshow.
I totally understand the issue.
Okay.
Maybe just start all over, Will. Go off screen share and then just start again the way you usually do it. It might just work.
And then start the share and come to this.
Now you're off.
Let's see. Yeah, let me try this again. Optimize.
Take your time.
Coming to here. Okay. Remove these. So now the whole thing seems to be stuck. Resume share. This is so strange. I've done this several times. I've never had this.
Yeah, it worked completely well when we were in the green room.
Can you see this right now?
Yeah, explicate to implicate.
Are you seeing?
Not full screen. You can see the slides.
Now,
but let's go with what you got. There you go.
You got it now.
That's so funny. That's what I thought I was doing before, but okay. You can see now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I defined the holo movement. So can I take a couple extra minutes here because I need to keep moving here.
Sure.
I will.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay, so we had the explicate and implicate orders, and then I was explaining the relationship between the two. So you haven't seen these pictures yet, right? So on the left side, you have these two cylinders.
So just start from the top, as it were. Yeah, there you go. We're at the explicate to implicate orders.
Right. And so basically, in this holo movement that Bohm spoke of, it's a single unbroken wholeness and flowing movement in which each part of the flow contains the entire flow. That is Bohm's answer to this third phase of Dalai Lama's schema. What is the relationship between the outer and the inner universe? And then this holo movement that he speaks of has two aspects. One is the visible and the other is the invisible. He called the visible the explicate order, that which we can directly perceive with our senses and our mind. And then the implicate order is all the rest of reality. And then to explain the relationship between the two, he gave this example. If you take these two cylinders on the left-hand side there, and you fill it in between with a thick, transparent liquid, and then you place an ink droplet on the top surface, you can see that black dot, and then you rotate that inner cylinder. And what happens is that black ink structure gets stretched out as you keep rotating and gets thinner and fainter and eventually disappears, as you can see in the right-hand picture there. Now, at that point, it's tempting, as I said, to conclude that the order in that drop has been rendered chaotic. It's distributed randomly throughout the glycerin. But actually, that's not true, because if you reverse now the order of rotation and turn that inner cylinder in the opposite direction, that ink structure begins to reappear. And as you keep turning, it gets thicker and shorter. And eventually, as you see on the right-hand side, that ink droplet completely reconstructs itself. So this is something that can be demonstrated in the laboratory. So that right-handmost picture is what Bohm called the explicate order. The left-handmost is what he called the implicate order. The order in that ink droplet is still there, but it's not visible to the eyes. It's hidden. And this is a key aspect, and this little experiment can be demonstrated in the laboratory. But the key lesson from this for all of science was that a hidden order may be present in what appears to be random. And this has vast applications, for example, to science, to astrology, which we're going to hear about later, where it seems like there could be no possible connection between us and the planets and the cosmos. And yet there may be a hidden order in what to the scientific eye appears to be random. Very key insight. Now, this implicate order that Bohm speaks of is really a synonym. It's essentially a scientific version of the spiritual reality. It's present everywhere, but visible nowhere. extends throughout space and time, but also far beyond space and time. It represents the unseen, that which is neither manifest nor accessible to our mind and five senses. And it also has multiple depths and layers. So this is the essence of what Bohm was proposing as a scientific theory to explain the fullness of reality. Now, a key insight from contemporary physics is that reality has a holographic or fractal structure. This is what Bohm meant by the holo movement. He meant that the whole of reality has this holographic or fractal-like structure. And to give you an example of this, the simplest example is what's called the Mandelbrot set. It's a simple geometric, essentially it's a plot of an equation that is iterated repeatedly in the complex plane. Don't worry if you don't understand those words. All you need to understand this is an eye for beauty. But if you take that simple formula you see there at the bottom and you plot its graph, as it were, you get something that looks like this. This is called the Mandelbrot set. I've turned it 90 degrees from how it's usually shown because it looks a bit like a sitting Buddha. And now, if you zoom into this structure, we find it has very unique properties. So I'm going to zoom in right near the top there. If we blow it up by order of magnitude, we get this. And if we then zoom in again right near the top, now suddenly my slide is not working. Let me try this. We get this. And now if you see the center point there where there's a kind of a narrowing pinch point, if we blow that up, we get this. And now if you see that little oblong in the center, if we blow that up, we get this. At this point, we're about 1 million times magnified. We're doing a deep dive into the structure of this set. And then as you see that little cross in the center, if we blow that up, we get this. And if you see that little star structure in the center, we take a deep dive and we find this. And then that little black dot in the center, and voila, we find an exact replica of the original, 136 million times smaller. And this is what Bohm meant by the holo part of the holo movement. It has a holographic structure in which each part is a miniature replica of the whole. So fractals or holograms are a modern scientific discovery of the ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. The microcosm replicates the macrocosm. There are several examples in nature. Here is a Romanesque broccoli. And if you look at it, each nodule of the broccoli is a replica of the entire broccoli. And if you look more detailed at the surface, you can see each tiny little nodule replicates the larger nodule on a smaller scale. So in science, this is sometimes called scale invariance or self-similarity, if you will. Or sometimes they call them nests of self-similar structures. This is another example. Tree branches have this fractal structure. If you take like that branch on the left and cut it off, it has the same structure as a tree, where the branch then is like the trunk. Lightning also has this same fractal structure. And this is a picture of the human eye. You can see the pupil at the top, and the blood vessels in the eye also have this fractal structure. In fact, throughout the human body, the circulatory system has this fractal structure. And then here on the left, we have electron microscope image of brain cells. These are neurons, and the scale is a few microns. And on the right, we see astrophysicist conception of the universe. And you can see this close correlation of structural similarity, as above, so below. So what I want to propose now is that consciousness itself also has this fractal or holographic structure. As the great poet Rumi said, there is a secret turning in the heart which makes the entire universe turn. And this is the reason that the heart is the key to transforming our world, ourselves and our world, is because then we're tapping that very secret process that makes the entire universe turn. And in this way, we are connected with all beings through essentially holographic interbeing. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh used the term interbeing. Contemporary physics uses the term quantum entanglement or non-local connection, that there is this fundamental connection between every part of the universe and every other part, and they are in relationship. Now, this is something that Einstein objected to in his famous repudiation of what he called spooky action at a distance. But 50 years of physical experimentation have proved our beloved Uncle Albert incorrect on this issue. David Bohm actually published a reformulation of quantum physics in 1952. And the ideas he proposed there, based on non-locality, have been tested in the laboratory through a criterion that physicist John Bell developed called Bell's theorem. And over 50 years of experimentation have consistently shown that non-locality is real, that this so-called spooky action at a distance relates to a fundamental interconnection across the entire cosmos, which is now the foundation for the second quantum revolution. So Bohm's paper was instrumental in this this Nobel Prize that was recently awarded a year ago, for essentially discovering a holographic interbeing as the fundamental nature of the connection of everything with everything else. Now, to give you an idea here, I'm gonna just take a quick dive here into, this is the Mandelbrot set again, but I want you to just see the intricate, deep structure. So we're taking a dive into this. Now, again, what we're looking at is simply a mathematical process here. Essentially, it's a graph of that simple equation I showed you earlier, but it's the most foundational equation that illustrates this holographic or fractal structure of reality. And this applies both on the physical plane and on the consciousness planes. And so, for example, it's because of this fractal nature of consciousness that the spiritual infinite can be perceived in the depths of the heart of a single human being. So a single human being can basically experience the infinity of divinity, or the infinity of what is called God or Great Spirit or Allah or Brahman, or the Tao that has no name. And you'll see as you watch here, we're diving deep in, and what's going to appear now in just a second is another one of these little fractals. There it is, right there. And it just keeps going on and on from there. So the lesson here is, as Rumi put it, you are not just a drop from the infinite ocean. You are the infinite ocean contained in a single drop. And the heart is the key. And I want to just show you this. This is a composite image that was published on the front cover of Nature in 2014. And it shows the trajectories of the nearest 100,000 galaxies. So you can see where it says you are here. That's the Milky Way galaxy. And what this shows is the nearest 100,000 galaxies, each of which is represented by a point of light. And then each little line of light shows the movement of that galaxy. And notice the shape of the heart now, of course, this is a 2D image of a 3D object. So to see the actual 3D object, this shows the lines, those same lines, but there's a 3D object. And to get a sense of what it is, you can see here that those lines conform remarkably strikingly to the human heart. So the lesson here is, if you want to go to the infinite, either outwardly or inwardly through the spiritual domain, you must go through the heart. So I want to conclude here by just, how do we practice? And how do we put all of this into practice? And the essence of it is described by Rumi in his wonderful poem, where he says, there's one thing in this world you must never forget to do. If you forget everything else and not this, there's nothing to worry about. But if you remember everything else and forget this, then you will have done nothing in your life. And he says, what you need to do is you need to connect to the deep root of your being, to remember the presence of the source of your Lord, and give your life to the one who already owns your breath and your moments. And how do we do that exactly? In my understanding, what we essentially need to do, I'm going to stop sharing here. Thank you. Is we need to basically connect to cultivating a deep, authentic spiritual practice that takes us beyond ourselves, far beyond the rational mind and our habitual ways of thinking and perceiving, so that we can tap the inmost well springs of our direct connection to this holo movement, to this eternal oneness within. And in that way, we can sort of swim in the waves of the holo movement, if you will.
Thank you so much, Will. So we just really appreciate everything you've brought. And if you have some practices, because you could come at the end to bring forth your practices. And we'll let Jude
Thank you
now, because this has been a phenomenal presentation of helping our minds grok that holographic nature of the universe and fractal nature of the universe. Can't thank you enough for taking us into that, deeply into that space. And we look forward to reconnecting with you after Jude and Andrew and Maggie speak. So Jude, would you like to speak to us about the unitive narrative as a basis for sacred activism and whatever else you want to bring to this party?
I'd love to. And I first want to thank Brother Phil for his inspiration, and also Will for yours. And I'm so happy I don't have slides, because I couldn't follow that. But what you have shown us, both of you, is really the basis for a unitive narrative, which is this bringing together, this little integration of science and spirituality, of inner and outer, of all those apparent polarities, which are just holographic representations and differentiations of the wholeness, of the unity within which we, all of us, and every aspect of our universe's existence and evolutionary arc is reflected in that holographic diversity. And so I'd like to, as Connie and Andrew have asked me, to talk a little bit about what this convergence of leading edge science at all scales of existence. You showed that magnificently, Will, by looking down the zoom in of the Mandelbrot. But we're now discovering at all scales of existence and across many different fields of research, and not just including the research and the fields looking at what might be known as the natural world, but as human behaviors. We're actually seeing those same fractal patterns playing out, for example, as Will showed, in many planetary and larger and tinier scales. We're seeing the same fractal patterns playing out in human behaviors. So the internet is fractal. The way we use our mobile phones are fractal. The way we borrow library books are fractal. I mean, I love the studies that show that our borrowing of library books actually follow fractal patterns. But what we're seeing, therefore, is we cannot, in any sense, separate ourselves from the wholeness of creation. And that is one of the most profound indigenous teachings, that we are all part of the web of life. But that web of life, as these teachings guide us, is not just our biological brothers and sisters. It's all our relations, which means the entire universe. And so going back to what I think we're all sharing, what this synthesis, what this convergence, what this integration is revealing, is that mind and consciousness aren't something we have. They are literally what we and the whole world are, which also means we are inseparable from each other, from our planetary home, from our entire universe, and that essentially the appearance of our universe, thus, its apparentness of energy and matter, of space and time, is not its most fundamental nature. and that its fundamental nature is spiritual. Spirituality is an infinite and eternal cosmos, co-creating a finite thought form we call our universe. But also what this is bringing forward is, instead of an old paradigm of an essentially dead, random universe, devoid of meaning, bereft of purpose, it is showing us, as both Brother Phil and Will are sharing with us, and Connie and Andrew's work share with us, it is revealing a cosmology of a living and loving universe that meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves from simplicity to ever greater levels of complexity and individuated self-awareness. And so we now stand on its bow wave of potential, an ongoing evolutionary impulse and an adventure. So this now is being able to be articulated as a new narrative. We're a narrative sharing species. We tell stories. We've always told stories, sitting around in circles around campfires. Now on the internet, however we've told stories, those stories are grounded in a deeper narrative that aims to give meaning and purpose to our lives and our role in the world. And yet for the last 500 years, as you were sharing, Brother Phil, our narrative has got progressively more reductionist and separate and materialist. And that's primarily been on the journey of science. And sure enough, that's opened so much to us. But it's also taken us perhaps further away from that grounding in that deep knowing that we truly are inseparable. And now it's all coming, not just full circle, but spiral into this opportunity for us now to articulate a new narrative based on this evidence. So bringing together all the wisdom and all the experience and now the evidence of science coming to this perspective. So with this, we're able to articulate a new and unitive narrative that can underpin and frame us in seeing the world through a new lens, a unitive lens, which of course our Indigenous brothers and sisters have held the wisdom for when we so much have lost it, but not truly lost it. We've just gone down a sort of a journey that now is re-converging into this perspective of wholeness. So from that understanding, I'd like to talk a little bit about what sacred activism may be, founded on a unitive narrative, framed by a unitive narrative, because it comes back to what Will and Brother Phil are saying. It begins in the heart. It begins in the heart. And therefore, instead of being in our heads so much and finally finding our way back home, it is integrating head and heart and hands into a purposeful service for the good of the whole. It integrates all that we are, all the innate divine masculine and feminine within each of all of us, brings those complementary attributes into their fullness of expression. And in so doing, it seems to me that with a unitive narrative at this moment, our collective moment of choice, a choice as do we stay in that old paradigm of separation, which we now know to be an illusion, or do we come together in this new awakening of humanity, the birthing of a new earth and a unitive age in service of sacred activism? And perhaps within each of us and within our evolutionary potential, with the divine masculine and feminine come together in their own sacred marriage within us and all of us to birth a divine child which the prophecies speak to, a divine child which essentially is that awe and that wonder that I hope when each of us looked at what Will was showing, my jaw was dropping. I mean, I hope nobody saw it because we're on the small screens, because it's not a pretty sight. But my jaw was, because this is the journey that I've also taken all through my life. And when I wrote my most recent book, The Story of Gaia, the big breath and the evolutionary journey of our conscious planet, I began with a sense of awe and wonder. But after writing the book, or the book writing me, I came to a place of silence because I ran out of words to describe the wonder, the marvel, the miracle, the magic, the joy, the love, the gratitude for our living and loving universe and our opportunity to walk our earth walk now at this great turning. So just in the couple of minutes I have left, I just want to share a little bit about the United States. I wrote a book called Hope, Healing Our People and Earth some years ago. And part of that book had a chapter on a number of countries. And one of those countries was the United States. And this I wrote just after President Obama came into office. And it was a moment that seemed so full of possibility, so full of potential. And we now know that we needed to walk further times before we might truly come to a point where that potential can be manifested, can be moved in action, and we're still in challenging times. But it seems to me that the United States' Constitution, the time of its birth, were incredibly propitious in our ongoing human journey. And for two reasons. First of all, and Connie spoke to this, when those Plymouth community came together, and I live near Plymouth in the UK, so you live near Plymouth in the US, so I feel that bridge. They encountered the wisdom of the indigenous communities that were there. And the wisdom of those communities, the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy, were actually accepted by the founding fathers and became also articulated in the Constitution. But it seems to me that two things were missed from that. One was that the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, included three aspects for wholeness: the law, society, and nature. And when their wisdom was taken into the US Constitution, it did not take nature. It did not take all our relations into that understanding. And the other aspect of that wisdom was it was the mothers and the grandmothers that chose the chiefs. And again, that divine feminine wisdom, that compassion, that inclusion was not fully taken into the US Constitution. So it seems to me that after 250 years or more from that point to now, there is now an opportunity to fulfill the spiritual destiny of the United States by embracing the full circle of compassion and including the wholeness of being and the divine feminine into how we go forward together. And when we do that, we have a little line at Whole World View, which says we can then act local, feel global, and think cosmic. And I think what we're sharing today is an invitation for us at this immense time of turning, of opportunity, of choice to do that and do that together.
Bravo, bravo, dear Jude. Thank you so much for your insights into the nature of the universe and into the U.S. Constitution and the Haudenosaunee, bringing in the great law and the aspects, those very important two aspects that were left out because we hadn't gone there into our deepest selves and connection to all that is due to that scientific paradigm that's over. So you've just so brilliantly articulated that, and I thank you. And now I'm turning it over to my beloved Andrew Cameron Bailey, and he will speak briefly. We're on a time situation a bit, and I know, Jude, that you have to leave at 12:30. So we'll miss you. We'll probably go on to 12:45. But Andrew will speak briefly about the trusting in a conscious, loving universe.
Okay. All right. Yes, I am planning to take 1 minute because we're about 10 minutes over, and this might catch us up a bit because we've still got some extraordinary information to share. I'm going to hold up this device. You may have seen it. It's an American thing. And it says a couple of things. It says one. One, what does that mean? And it also says, in God we trust. So as I promised earlier, I'm going to talk about God, I'm going to talk about trust, and I'm going to talk about oneness. And it's all on the American dollar bill, which is, if we really knew it, understood what it is, it's a reminder. Every time you spend, maybe not a penny, but is it on all of the coins?
In God we trust is on all the coins.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to say in this minute. God is perhaps the most misunderstood word in the English language, or Gott if you're in German, or whatever it might be. What is God? And I'm going to say this. God is not a bearded old gentleman on a decorative swing set in the deep sky, surrounded by gorgeous angelic beings and the rest of it. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's this. It is the primordial energy of the universe that existed 1 billion years before the beginning, before there was time. So 1 billion years is meaningless. A nanosecond is the same thing. The universal energy that created, connects, and sustains everything that is in all the trillion universes. That, to me, is God. We like to call it the conscious, loving universe. Ooh, what's this love thing? Well, let's talk about trust for a second. So in God we trust. So if we are an infinitely connected part of this thing I just described, that you could call God or the universe or the various names like Allah and so on and so on. I grew up in Zululand in Africa. I'm going to tell you the Zulu name for God, Brother Phil. Are you listening? Unkulunkulu. Unkulunkulu. If you're a Zulu, you call God Unkulunkulu. And it's that same thing that we call grandfather. It's that same thing. Everybody has this concept, but I think everybody misunderstands it because we try to put this unlimited thing into a box. Can't be done. So if we trust that, we are part of that act. Not only are we part of it, we are it, because as we've just learned from watching the Mandelbrot imagery, it goes on forever. And we are it at all scales. We, in fact, are it. Every breath I take is the universe taking a breath. By trusting it, it's very similar to the word faith. So to have total infinite faith in something is the same thing as trusting it. To know that it has got your back no matter what outer circumstances might appear to be. So that's not my 2 cents worth. I think I could say it's my $1 worth.
And the nature of that energy is love. And the reason we see things as not love is because we don't understand the nature of that love, which is unconditional. It gives us everything we ask for. And what are our requests? Our consciousness. And we have 8 A's, aspects of consciousness that determine our frequency and thereby our reality and are our requests to the universe. And I'll say those in one sentence. With expanded awareness, they all begin with A, with expanded awareness and accurate assumptions, we choose our attitude, consciously direct our attention, align with our highest inner promptings, attune to the cosmic oneness of all that is, take committed action, and allow the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams. So,
and if you want to know a little bit more about trust, we wrote a 325-page book on the subject. It's called The Trust Frequency. It includes that wonderful sentence. It includes a lot of what Jude and Will and Phil have been talking about, because what we attempted was a distillation of the wisdom of the ages to come into a simple book that people could really understand, didn't give you a brain freeze trying to figure out what all these long words mean, and just to expand the heart and enable us to just literally live from a place of trust as opposed to living from a place of fear. Trust just opens the heart, fear closes it.
Yes, 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 yes. So now we're going to hear from Maggie Engel, who is going to give us a astrological reading of the United States. And it is a recording, and I'm going to share screen and play that recording. Unfortunately, Maggie could not be with us, as she is now on a cruise down the Amazon, exploring the energies of the Amazon. So let me do that, and I will share screen.
She also happens to be one of the most beautiful young ladies on the planet, so that's always good.
So
Maggie, where are you?
Maggie. So there's Maggie, but I have to, no, before I do that, I have to maximize, hold on. Well, I have to share screen, and I have to optimize, which is done.
You're done, you're good.
And where's Maggie now?
Maggie, where are you?
Where's Maggie? Oh, darn.
She's up the Amazon.
Did
Did she go up there?
Darn it, I just had it. Darn it.
Okay, unshare, do it again.
Okay,
But you need it on your desktop.
I have it on my desktop. I'm sorry, folks.
That's what happens when you're running out of time. Everything, the hurry.
Everything, the harder you go, the behinder you get.
That's it.
Okay, so let's try
Well,
again.
you've got such a peaceful smile on your face there. Like, it's all good.
I have tremendous compassion, having just been through my own version of the same dilemma.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's good to see you. Last time I was in Sedona. That was great.
That's right. It is great to see you. And thank you for this. It's great to meet you, Phil. We actually were supposed to meet at a conference in 2013, but never quite happened. We invited you to speak. And Jude, if you're leaving soon, I just want to thank you so much for your presentation, for your insights, and your incredible contribution to unifying science and spirituality in this deeper vision of a fractal wholeverse. It's so important.
Okay, folks, here's Maggie.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil.
Maggie Engel.
Hello, friends. Maggie and Engel here today to share. So grateful to be joining you in this really amazing forum about sacred activism, the origin, evolution, and realization of the American promise. So honored and grateful when Connie invited me to share today. I plan on sharing just a little bit about the United States' astrology and its recent Pluto return, and this expansion and evolution of consciousness that is the awakening that is happening globally for all of us, and the a few of the things that are helping to bring that about and expanding the potential of this massive awakening and quantum shift in human consciousness. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful, so honored. So the real really cool thing that's happening for the United States is we are in the middle of our Pluto return. Pluto just went off of 27 degrees for the last time in our lifetime, which is the degree of the United States' natal Pluto. So the United States was born on Independence Day, July 4th, 1976. And that Pluto was at 27 degrees and 33 seconds on that moment of birth for the United States. So over the last couple of years, Pluto has been bringing the United States and the collective consciousness through our Pluto return. So when Pluto returns to the spot that it was when it was born, it's really asking us, and especially Pluto in Capricorn in the second house of the United States is asking us, how in alignment are the structures that we've built in reality, the governmental structures, the institutions, the organizations, the foundations. How are these structures in alignment with our values as a nation, with our worth and our worthiness? And how are they supporting us and supporting us having a high value and a high self-worth? And how are these structures that we've built in society supporting our manifestation? And how are these things in alignment, and how are they not? Have we built structures in reality that are really not in alignment with the values that we laid forth for ourselves as a nation? And if we have, those are crumbling around us, right? So the structures that have been built that are misaligned from our values as a nation and as a people are falling away. That which is not meant to move forward with us in the evolution of our consciousness, and the evolution of love consciousness, the expansion of love consciousness, is falling away. Organizations, structures, foundations, companies, this is big business stuff. The stuff that isn't in alignment is breaking down. Governmental structures, currencies, like the stuff that needs to die and be reborn is in the midst of doing that. So, we're replacing the outdated with the evolutionary, with a Pluto return. And Pluto unearths uncomfortable truths. Pluto is the planet of truth. Pluto brings light to the shadow. Pluto is, it shows the shadow parts of human existence, right? So that it can be transmuted, transformed, alchemized, and the phoenix can rise, and the new creation can come from the death of the old. So that is what is happening in the consciousness of the people of the United States at large, and all of the huge structures in the United States. And that's a process, and that takes time. Now, we're on the tail end of that process, but it's definitely still occurring, especially with Pluto in the high degrees of Capricorn, because Pluto is continuing to take down structures in reality that just no longer serve. And that's for everyone as well. Everyone has Pluto in Capricorn right now. So all of the nations across the world they're letting go, either willingly or unwillingly, because Pluto will give you no choice. It will die if it needs to die. So this is just part of the evolutionary consciousness of the whole collective consciousness right now, is that big structures in society, big ways of doing things, outdated ways of running countries, of financial institutions, all of these things are just being transformed. They're being wiped away so that the new can be reborn. We also have Uranus in Taurus, which is very revolutionary. Taurus is ruled by Venus and Mother Earth. And so that's a planet of harmony, of love, of beauty, of grace, of openness, of balance. And the planet Mother Earth, right? Our earthly physical reality here. What we value, how we manifest. Taurus is money, Taurus is value, Taurus is worth. And Uranus in Taurus is calling for us to really up our values and our worth, and up how we value Mother Earth, how we value life here on Mother Earth, how we value high vibrational awakening energy. Uranus is the planet of awakening, of revolution, of insight, of this is like the revolutionary idea coming in. This is quantum leap energy. This is quantum shifting energy. This is timeline shifting. And, Uranus is awakening. It's ascension energy. So this is Uranus in Taurus is really calling for the awakening of the planet, the awakening of this higher vibrational frequency being grounded here in earthly reality and manifesting all around us. And then one last thing I'll share on is Saturn in Pisces. For the next couple of years, we have Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn in Pisces, along with Neptune in Pisces for many of the last years and some of the next few, we have Neptune in the high degrees of Pisces. And, you know, these are both showing us that we're moving towards a higher idealized human existence timeline here, right? We have the ability to. All of these energies are showing us that we have the ability to expand in consciousness, to elevate in consciousness, to connect with our divinity, to devote Saturn, to devote to our divinity and to the experience of divinity in and of everything with Saturn and Pisces. And Neptune is saying, let's bring those higher spiritual ideals and that heaven on earth reality into existence here on earth. Neptune at home in Pisces. And so there's all this energy that is available to us in the cosmos that is helping us to expand, to connect internally, to understand the cosmic reality that as within, so without, as above, so below. It's this energy of expansion of consciousness, of connection with divinity, of awakening to truth, to the truth of reality around us. And soon we'll have Pluto moving into Aquarius for the next 20 some years. And this is, you know, this is a death of vibrational reality that no longer serves us and a birth of this new awakened vibrational reality here on earth. And so I just in the depths of my being feel like we are seeing death and destruction around us in some places on the earth, because it's the evolution of consciousness. We have to see the shadow, to love it, to hold it, to recognize that it no longer serves, and to move into new choices. You know, Capricorn is also decision choice. So Pluto is revolutionizing how we decide as well. So thank you. I'm so grateful that I have been able to share today, that I had the opportunity and the invitation to share. I'm so grateful for all of the beautiful work that all of those who've contributed to this forum are doing in the world. It is my honor to have incarnated with all of you at this time and to be here on Mother Earth, helping with this expansion into love, this awakening of the purity of consciousness that is all of us. And I'm just so deeply grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this opportunity, and so much love to all of you.
She's amazing.
Wow, what a blessing. And Maggie is. Wow, wow, wow.
The cherry on the top.
Yes. So we're approaching the end of our time together. I will put a link to that video into the chat if I can before we go. But meanwhile, does anyone have some closing thoughts?
Will might have a practice.
Oh yeah, Will, can we go back to you and your practice? Were you going to step into some practices for people to access that part of themselves that will only go into sacred activism?
Well, I'll make a few comments, which basically I have a set of principles of spiritual activism, which you can find on my website. I put my website in the chat. And I'll just pick out a couple, one of which is to underscore something that has been said by Chief Phil Lane and also by Jude and myself, which is the heart is really the foundation of discovering how we act. And one of these principles that I'll focus on is really the way it's stated here is do not insulate yourself from the pain of the world. Let your heart break open and learn to move in the world with a broken heart. And the reason for this is that what breaks our heart opens our heart. And then our heart and our actions become part of humanity healing itself. In a certain sense, if you recall Joseph Campbell, who used to say, follow your bliss, what I'm suggesting here is if you're not sure what action to take in the world, follow your heartbreak. Follow what breaks your heart, because that's pulling on you to be an instrument for restoring justice and harmony in a place of pain and suffering. And so that's a key place to kind of find what you're drawn to. And then my deepest sense of what we need to do as a practice is to listen inwardly, deeply to our hearts, to develop a contemplative practice of silent prayer or meditation, and to occasionally take a deep retreat, so that you can really move beyond the mind's ways of knowing and tap into those deeper well springs of the Holo movement within your own being, of your own direct connection to source, because that will bring forth the insights and the guidance that you need in order to become part of the world healing itself. You know, there's a wonderful, we all know that in a sense, humans need God to be fully human, but it's also true that God needs humans to be fully God, that each one of us is needed as part of the divine plan. And if you don't discover your note to sing in the symphony of life and sing it out, there's a kind of a hole in the divine plan, if you will. So each one of us has a particular purpose. And through deep practice of meditation or of non-ordinary states of vision quest, perhaps working with breath work, holotropic breath work, or working with psychedelics, conscious use of psychedelics, all of these are different ways to contact that direct connection to source and to be inspired by what our true action should be. And then the other requirement, I think, is to have a daily practice that keeps us attuned to that, a daily practice of prayer or meditation or walking, or basically taking respite from the mind so we can reconnect to our soul. And so those deep dives of retreats coupled with a daily practice of prayer and meditation, I think helps us to stay aligned and to really bring our gift of healing into the world.
Beautiful, Phil. Phil.
Phil.
Will. Oh, thank you
Take it
so
as a
much.
great
Tremendous
compliment that
will,
you
Phil.
mistook me as Phil for
Yeah.
a moment.
Yes, and thank you for sharing a couple of your principles. Which one of your website are those principles on?
Actually, they're on the Dawn of Inner Spirituality.org.
Ah, okay, because I couldn't find them on Satyana.
Right.
For
Satyana
me-
has kind of become a main headway for the other two. So I listed the two websites, the grworld.org and the dawnofinterspirituality.org.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, go there and look at his 15 principles of spiritual activism, because it's very important along with those practices and that understanding that Will has brought. So, Brother Phil, do you have any closing words?
I just have a question to ask Will.
Sure.
That to me has tremendous significance. I'm not a physicist as yourself, although I certainly enjoy studying little bits that I can understand. But you know, I've been very fascinated by these paired electrons.
Right.
That no matter, it seems like no matter how far away they are from one another, they could be 100 million light years away. My understanding is one turns one way, the other will simultaneously turn the other way. So that tells me that there is a energy or a connection to this order, unseen and unseen, that is instantaneous, that goes beyond the speed of light, which we measure this physical universe in. Therefore, literally what's happening here, even in this conversation, is connected to everything in this entire physical universe we know of and beyond.
That is correct.
Am I correct? I mean, you're the physicist. Is this what the implications of these paired electrons is telling us, that there's a connective tissue throughout this universe that's instantaneous, that there is a speed faster than the speed of light that goes beyond anything we understand?
That is absolutely correct. That is why Einstein had so much trouble with it, because he thought, and relativity theory says nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. So there was a kind of speed limit. But in fact, what you just articulated is exactly the current understanding that is emerging. And it is very radical, because it basically says there's an instantaneous interconnection between every part of the universe and every other part that's faster than any travel from A to B. It's immediate. It's here now. And so in some sense, the whole cosmos is accessible to us through the doorway of our own hearts right now, in this moment. That is the deep meaning, yes. And that is the radical nature of this what they call quantum entanglement, which is the fact that no matter how far apart they are, they're fundamentally interconnected. But I think it's a better term would be quantum communion. As Thomas Berry said, the universe is not a collection of objects. It's a communion of subjects. It's a grand, orchestrated, harmonious communion of every part with the whole and with every other part. So what you said is beautifully articulated. And yes, that is the full implication. And that is what the Nobel Prize was awarded for in physics 1 year ago, for the experiments that proved this. So this is now really accepted.
Well, it's very interesting, because as I was kind of beginning my spiritual journey quite a few years ago, I'm just kind of still in the beginning of that journey. The elders talk about the everywhere spirit. And the everywhere spirit, and that's where in 1975 we went down and met with these two elders, Eddie Belrose and Abe Bernstick, and they talked about how the everywhere spirit was going to be made physically manifest on the earth, and how we're going to be able to see people from the other side of Mother Earth. They're going to be able to see us. They completely described the internet in depth, and they said this is a tool that you must use. Because it's going to bring about this understanding of oneness, this understanding of that we're all one, and they're going to be able to allow us through this everywhere spirit to communicate in a way we've never known before. And so now I'm hearing now that the science is just proving this everywhere spirit. And the elders were speaking about this everywhere spirit. It's everywhere.
It's
all
everywhere.
At once. Everywhere,
it's
all at once.
Everywhere, all at once. It's kind of like that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Exactly.
That is the nature of the truth of reality. And it's what I like to call the internet of the heart.
Yes.
Which is the nature of spiritual reality, because through the gateway of the heart, we have access to the infinite. Everyone does. And the internet is actually a consequence of that spiritual truth. The internet is simply an application of that larger truth. So yeah, you said it beautifully. Thank you. That's exactly what it is.
I have one final statement, if I may. 4 words. And this is an instruction manual for being a member of the species Homo sapiens. And it is this: trust the loving universe.
With bold, committed action.
Okay.
Yes. She made it 8.
Not kidding.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is.
We've got it.
Watch the signs like the native people. Watch the signs, listen, and act from those signs and from what you hear from your heart and from the universe. It's there to teach us, to take us on this journey, but we have to take that action piece.
Welcome back, Jim.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Will, Phil, and Jude in her absence. Connie, this has been a marvelous session. And I must say, Will, your slideshow was so poignant today, because we know sort of all this intellectually. And it's always good to kind of get it physically, imagistically, so that we really get that the everywhere soul is actually everywhere.
Yeah.
And each point is a microcosm of the macrocosm. And so you brought that in a tangible, I would say, embodied way. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for it. It was a beautiful reminder of the intimacy of our cosmos.
It is that. Thank you. That's a beautiful way of putting it. The full infinity of divinity is contained in the intimacy of each one of our own hearts.
Yeah.
That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
So thank
beautiful.
you, Jim. I appreciate that.
And that way of saying it flaps the heart open. So that's very beautiful. And that's what I found with the native elders who came into my life in the 90s, Phil included, that how they put their words together just opened my heart. And so I dedicated my life to sharing and bringing forth the heart and spirit and knowing of the indigenous people. And so it's so heartening to come to this time now, 30 years later, where that is coming to pass with the new science and with the indigenous elders, visionary elders like Phil, stepping forward from that heart space of the oneness of creation and our one human family that is Phil's message forever. Thank you.
And thank you, Phil, for your beautiful prayers and your expansive vision and commitment to supporting all of us to do our part to participate in the earth healing and humanity healing. And you too, Jim. I mean, my God, you are lifelong in this stuff. I think I first met you when we went to the Soviet Union in the 1987 with Gorbachev and the whole entourage of trying to fix their massive energy infrastructure mess they had. But
those were the good old days.
You've been on the cutting edge for so long, and I just love Ubiquity University. I so love what you're doing. So
thank you.
And I can really attest to the whole process of from childhood to childhood. My father had talked about that. And I think as we get older, things that were so complex become much simpler in a certain way, yet more complex. But it is good to be coming into my second childhood. And I say that in the most beautiful, happy way, because that's what happens.
That's the true path of becoming a fully mature adult, is to become a child again. Jung said the same thing.
Yeah.
Jesus said the same thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Nietzsche, the Superman, the Ubermensch, ultimately was the one who could take on childlike qualities of laughter and dance,
beautiful.
and play.
And listen to the children. John Denver has a song, Listen to the Children.
So, Phil, why don't you give us a closing prayer, and then we'll wish everybody happy Thanksgiving and bring the program to a close.
Creator of the universe, most beloved one, we just give thanksgiving this day. Great heartfelt thanksgiving that we're here to witness the time long prophesied throughout sacred traditions, throughout Mother Earth, in which humanity would awaken to their true spiritual reality. Each is sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting, that we will be able to transcend in a most loving, kind, compassionate, forgiving manner all this conflict going on Mother Earth, and might truly walk today and every day in a little bit better way each day and embrace our human family. Embrace the challenges we have with the complete understanding that everything comes to us for our own spiritual perfecting, for our own spiritual growth and development. And we just give thanksgiving today for all that's come in our lives, all that's come in humanity's history, the most challenging issues, the most wondrous issues that keep us going, For we know everything in this universe has come for our own becoming, to become that which we know in this sacred universe that we ourselves are a direct reflection of this sacredness. Haolimichante Washtealo, and bless this wonderful gathering every morning that people come to Humanity Rising from all over Mother Earth. May it continue with the utmost joy and happiness and information, so we as a human family might truly understand, again, the prior unity and oneness of a human family, that we're intimately related to all living things. And the hurt of one is a hurt of all, and the upliftment, the honor of one is the upliftment and honor of all. Haolimichante Washte Aho.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Will, Connie, Andrew. Beautiful two-day session. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. As we close, everyone, I just want to let everybody know we'll be meeting again tomorrow and also on Friday. We meet 5 days a week, almost 365 days a year at Humanity Rising. So tomorrow I'll be offering some reflections on the situation in Gaza in terms of the historical, I would say, religious and spiritual legacy of Palestine and the Jews and the Arabs, both Semites who are in an active stage of fratricide. And to understand that as we're giving thanksgiving for our lives seems to us to be an appropriate subject for Thanksgiving for those of you who have the time and inclination. And then on Friday, we'll be back again with some reflections on the situation in the Ukraine, which is coming to closure in a very, very profound way. And so we'll be talking about that as well. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. You're all welcome to the after session chat. And for that, you go to our Zoom invites. You can also catch it in the chat that was just put up by Stan. Bye, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.